Hello, hello, hello. We back again. Welcome to Epic God Radio, Rise Television. This is WTIM. I am your host, Tad Al. Thank you for joining me tonight. Um, I had to study quite a bit on this subject today. Mental black hole. You know, who turned out the lights? But before we jump into this, I just want to say thank everybody that is supporting my channel. Um, I really thank you for viewing any likes and support that you show me. Please, again, don't forget to like and subscribe um, to my channel. I'm going to keep coming at it. You know, I think we have some pretty good subjects. If you just go back and listen to some that we've already been doing, you will get a chance to see what we're talking about. We have different subjects, relationships, race, a little bit of religion, politics. We don't really get a whole lot into it, but for the most part, this is an empowerment channel. And that is what we're here to do. If it helps to empower you, please, by all means, let it. You know, don't turn from truth, and let's try to get more truth out there. Especially with everything that we're dealing with in this day and age today. You know, so again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And so let's get right into this. The mental black hole. Who turned out the lights? You know, some of the things that we are dealing with right now. Today's morals and standards have like really changed drastically. You know, and it truly has. From what we have done when I was a kid. Even when you look at, how kids are today, they don't want to go outside, where we used to cry to go outside, um, even when you are looking at, you know, and I think some of it has to do with personal growth. Like when you were in high school, you got the little letters, do you like me, circle yes or no, and the values of the things that you had back then compared to what you do today. you know um how you view getting involved in a relationship with somebody is very different today than what it was back then. So, morals and standards are changing. The value of relationships and marriages has lost its effect, you know, um, as well as the importance of the roles of men and women in the home. Back when we were, uh, when I was growing up, you saw more biological marriages. When I was coming up, you see more men and women. You knew whose daddy was whose mama was whose. And you had more of that. Back in those days compared to what you deal with today. Um, and I think that even something that I'm guilty of, we look at how many partners and things we're starting to have as far as, oh, it didn't work out with this person. Now I'm dating this person. It didn't work out with that person. Now I'm dating that person. So, that even that changed. Um, Even the standards of like the gangsters. I mean, my dad was talking the other day, and I'm gonna come back to like the marriages and relationships, because well, before I go into the gangsters, let me touch that. Let's not skip over things, but I just had a conversation earlier today where somebody told me it's teamwork. It's teamwork because we were talking about how the man is expected to go out here, go to work, bring home the money, take care of his family. You know, that's the normal order of things. And the young lady was saying, well, now I think it's a teamwork thing. My mom and dad were together for 55 years. He brought home the money, and she brought home the money too. But that's and my question to her was, well, I mean, like, are you spiritual? Do you have a biblical background? Because when you look at things, it depends on how you're looking at it. If because you can come from something, like some people can come from a biblical background, and so they'll look at it from a biblical standpoint. But then you have confusion because sometimes you can come from a biblical background, but you want something to be a different way. But like I was telling her, if you come from a biblical background and you're looking at it from a biblical standpoint, her exact words were, yes, I am. Okay, well, if you're looking at it from a biblical standpoint, then there were curses given. There were curses given in the Bible on that note, as far as what you were doing, what you were able to do. It told the man, by the sweat of your brow you'll eat bread for the rest of your day. So work was given to him. That's how that was his job. And then he said to the woman, in pain you'll bring forth children, and your desire shall be to your husband, he shall rule over you. That was the natural order. So when you look at it, that was the teamwork part of it. And that's what you had to go off of, because that's what the teamwork was. So anyway, moving on from there, um, even when you look at the standards of the gangsters, which is what we'll touch on now, like, that's different. Back in when me and my dad were talking, and I had to tell him, I said, Dad, I take my hat off to you, because you really was going through something, man. Back in those days, you dealt with real gangsters, Al Capone and Bumpy Johnson. Like, you came from back in those times, man. Like, wow, like, that's serious business right there. And not only did he have to deal with those gangsters, but he also had to deal with racism at a high level back then. Even if you had a car, it was like, how you get this car, and they, like, they were really on you. You couldn't, you couldn't drink from water fountains that you wanted to drink from, and like, things were just a certain way, back in those days, and you have to think about, you know, uh, again, like, where this puts people mentally, um, and one of the biggest things that I look at is, do you think the biggest stain in our consciousness and our subconscious minds is the scar of having been conquered? You know, I mentioned before about the saying of, well, we was kings and queens and we ruled the world. And I've talked about the curse on the black race and everything like that. And a lot of people that say, well, no, I don't believe in the curse, and I don't believe this happened and I don't believe that happened. But my thing is, how do you go from being kings and queens and ruling the world to being the slave? And the people that you were ruling are now over you. That's not so much, and we can sit and say all day long, well, they stole this, they did this. But do you think it's a conscious thing or a subconscious thing, either or, that it's a scar of having been conquered? And I ask that because everyone can explain how they lost in defeat, especially against somebody that they don't think they should have lost to. You know, I look at my Packers all the time, and I said, man, we shouldn't have lost to that team, man. We lost to the Giants one year. Giants couldn't beat, a football team of fleas, but they turned around and beat us, the Packers, and this is with Aaron Rodgers. And I was like highly upset. I'm like, how do we lose to them? Like, and it went on like that. But you gotta understand, when we look at that, when you're looking at something that shouldn't be, but this is what's going on. Is that not a curse? I mean, well, how did it happen then? So that's what I'm saying. Like, do you think it's like a subconscious thing on your subconscious mind? Even when and when you look at how we get into the space of a mental black hole. Like, how do we get there? How do we, you know, we begin to make excuses, like conquering and losing. These are the things that, how do people get off on drugs, really? Like, if you go, like, you're not born, I mean, in most cases you're not born a drug addict. You're born a healthy, like, otherwise they'll be putting you through some kind of detox as a baby and everything else like that. So you're not born this way. It's something that comes about. So as this is coming about, how do you get to the point where, oh, you're a full-fledged, I smoke weed every day, I sniff cocaine, I some people smoke crack, some people shoot heroin. How do you get to that? Like, you weren't born with a needle in your arm when you were born. So when you're going through this, and how did you get there? And one of the things that you learn, and as a counselor, you learn that people, they have a lot of defeats in life. So when you have gone through these defeats, and this builds on your self-esteem level, it tears it down. So you're feeling less and less and less important. So as you're feeling less and less and less important, you start to look for other things to comfort that. you know Sometimes it might be a blunt. Man, this is so hard right now, and you know, and you don't, I was watching Cat Williams one day. He said, if you smoke a blunt, it's gonna change your whole perspective, at least for a little while, you know. Um, and so even when you look at, like, uh George Foreman, for example, losing to Muhammad Ali, that had a lasting effect on him for a long time. You know, he knew he could beat him, went out there to beat him. That's what he set out to do. And Ali did the rope a dope thing on him. He wasn't even paying attention to what Ali was doing. And at the end of the fight, boom, and that put him in a mental black hole. And so, people can say, "Oh, that was dumb," the rope a dope thing, but you duped them in, So at the end of the day, that's being conquered, So when you're conquered, and you're allowed to be conquered, and not only allowed to be conquered, you are the more dominant force. So you're wondering how this happened. So you say, "Oh, you stole this." If you have an idea and you give it to somebody and they take it and they act like it's theirs, and then there's nothing you can do about it, shut up, sit down. Well, wait a minute now. You wait a minute. It's mine. You know, Bully tactics. I mean, like, these are things that were happening in our culture. So, and I mean, like I'm saying, it's conquering. That's conquering. Um, it's just like boxing or UFC. I mean, they conquer. I've seen some people win fights and shouldn't won. I've seen people people that got beat, man, sitting up there, lip all bulged, and they're like, he won. What? No, he didn't. But that's how it goes. Um, so when you look at that, and you're realizing you're in a mental black hole, and you need to figure a way out. This is what you're doing. But we We know we are supposed to be when you know where you're supposed to be, yet accepting where we are. It's almost like we can't even find each other in the darkness. Like I can't find you. It's dark. So I can't find you. So we have the ability to stand together to get up out of here. That's what's happening. Um, and so you have to wonder, like, is restoration, you know, um, in accepting being conquered instead of complaining? Like basically what I'm saying is, can you come out of this if you accept the fact that you were conquered? Like George Foreman goes on to win title after title after title after the Muhammad Ali thing. So when he goes on to, win these titles, he had to accept what happened with him, with Muhammad. So he had to pull that together. I don't know. Me, I don't even know if I could have got back in the ring after that. After realizing somebody did that to me. Like how I'm this big guy with this brute strength, and man, I let this dude do this to me. Dang, man. Yeah, that would bother me. That would bother me wholeheartedly. And then you get back and you go through years of that, and he did. He if you look at his story, he'll tell you, rest in peace. But he'll tell you he went through a long period of depression and everything else like that because of that. You know, and one of the things that I look at when you look at what's going on right now with the presidency, like just the other day there was a congressman, I think his name was Hakeem Jeffries. He was talking, and everybody was like, "Yeah, he's talking. He's hitting good points. He's hitting good points." And the more he was talking, I'm just realizing, like, man, you're not really saying anything. I mean, you're saying something, but it's not anything that they care about. They have an agenda, and that's what they're sticking to. They stick to the agenda. Doesn't matter if it hurts their own people. They're going to stick to that agenda. And you sitting up here letting them know how much their agenda is hurting you is making them do it all the more. So the more you set up here and hey man, look, you're lying to people, you're doing this, you're doing that, they're smiling because they know exactly what they're about. As soon as you shut up and get off the mic, we know what we're about to go do. And that's what it was. And I knew that. I knew it's why he was standing up there talking, you know. And you have to look at it. When you look at these races, Asian, Indian, Arabian, all of them, none of them want us to rise above them. Not one of those races. When we walk inside of a building, it's a problem. When they see us come around the corner, it's a problem. Why? Because we have people that dominate, like Magic Johnson, like Michael Jordan, like Sha'Carri Richardson. We dominate the music industry. We dominate the television. We're entertainers. I was talking about this the other day. That's what we are. When they want to be entertained, they look to us. That's what they do. We're the entertainers. But what they're going to say is, we're going to control this entertainment. And then we're gonna make all the clothes. We're gonna make all the perfumes. We're gonna make all the medicine and all of that. And you're gonna buy it from us. We're gonna sell it, and you're gonna buy it from us. Everything you need: food, water, medicine, housing. You need money. You need a car. You need cement. You want to build a basketball court. You want a road built over here. Anything. Doesn't matter what it is. You're gonna come get it from us. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I don't understand how you can live on this earth. The life expectancy of a black man is 75 years. The life expectancy of a normal man is 80. So, but even in that time frame, I don't see how you can be here 75, 80 years and leave here and you don't have a blade of grass to your name. That right there is beyond me. And this is what's happening. This is the way that they keep the lights out. They keep the lights out, but don't let them get anything. Don't let them get nothing. You can have a trophy, but you can't have a company that built the building where you're gonna go get that trophy. You can't have a company that's gonna make the trophy. You can't all of that. And so your importance is through the people outside of the darkness. Isn't that something? It's almost like a reverse psychology of religion. What does it say in the Bible? Come to the light. Jesus is the light. You got to come to the light. If you don't come to the light, you'll be in darkness. How are you living out here in everyday life? And then you have some people, they'll make a few dollars, make it big doing something. You got a couple, billionaires just out of our culture, not many, but you have a few billionaires coming out of our culture. You got a lot of people that have hundreds of millions of dollars, but what we won't do is worry about one another. I was watching the movie Wakanda Forever the other day, and I'm sorry, Black Panther, and one of the things that they didn't want was to let their weapons out. We're not here to protect the world. We're here to protect Wakanda. And that was really something, to hear, how they were sticking together. But I also got to look at what the guy was talking about in the movie, where he was saying it's a lot of people out here that look just like you. That's not, that's not as comfortable as you are. So, what do you do then? And it's crazy because I was listening to something and it said that uh they were holding people up, like they were taking rich people and they were basically robbing them. And they said, are we evil? And the guy said to her, he said, when a wolf kills a rabbit, is he evil? The beauty of the rabbit and everything. And she said, well, no. He said, we're wolves, you know. And that's a different analogy to look at it, but it was interesting. It was interesting, especially to what we're talking about here. You know, what do you have to be to come out of the rut that you were in? Now you can look at it from a biblical standpoint, where God said, "Return unto me." Now you can do that, and I'll be honest with you. I've actually been wholeheartedly dealing with my spiritual walk, and things have gotten a lot better. I've learned I'm not going where my Creator ain't told me to go. I haven't been doing it, and because I haven't been doing it, I've been able to do other things, like literally. A lot of vacations that I've taken has been because you're doing what your Creator told you to do. There was a time where I had been locked up quite a few times. I'm not doing none of that stuff now. So I don't even have to worry about it. My nephew one day, he was riding with me in the car. He said, "Man, there go the cops." I said, "So? I said, what you worry about the cop for? What Hey man, what, you done did something?" "Nah, I'm just saying that they go, you got something on you?" Ah, man, I said, man, you know something? You got me worried now. You got me worried about you. I'm not even worried about the cops. I'm worried while you riding in my car and you worrying about them. Well, I'm not speeding. My paperwork's right. So what you, man? Look, let me get you up out my car. And I took him straight home. I sure did. Cause now you ain't about to have me up over here stressed out because I don't know what you got. But I as soon as I get you up out my car, I ain't gotta worry about it. And that's how I'm living today. I'm sorry. You can be mad at me all you want. You should shut up. Shut up, sit back and ride. Like I said, I'm not doing nothing illegal. And I mean, like even when it comes down, I tell people all the time, don't you get in my car and be trying to pull that sovereign citizen stuff if we get pulled over. If that man pull us over and ask you for your ID, you better get to him. You are not about to turn a 2-minute stop into a 2-hour stop because you want to talk about what this man can and can't do. If he couldn't pull us over, we wouldn't be pulled over. Any complaints you got, file your complaint with the office. Let me see your ID. Here you go, sir. You sure can. There it is. Write your ticket. If you're gonna give me a ticket, I'll take the ticket. Yeah. But if I have a problem with the pullover, then I can write you up and I can turn that in. If it's that important. But and I get it. I get what people are saying because at the end of the day, it's like, why even have to go through all of that? But this is the world we live in. This has been going on since the beginning of time. They used to listen, man. They used to come back in Roman times. They would come and take somebody out your house if you owed taxes. Especially if you had like a pretty little daughter, you didn't know what was about to happen to her. They'd tell the soldiers, take the daughter. Wait a minute. No, you ain't paid your taxes. We're gonna take her. She's gonna work for us for until your debt is paid off. This been going on for a minute. So it's not something new. These are injustices. This happening. But like I tell, I get a lot of people upset with me because when they tell me about this stuff that's going on with this president and this presidential team, I tell them I don't really want to hear anything about it. We had a whole president that there shouldn't nobody been in there running for president with 30 some felonies. I don't even have that. I don't know. But regardless, if I would have tried to run for president, that would have been done. No, now how he up in here? Same way the one that's in there now, the same way he got it. He ran for president. And I mean, what do you can stop that, but we don't stop this stuff. Now he doing whatever he want to do. And he trying to get as much in there as he possibly can before his time is up. You know, and so when we look at this, y'all, like you got to realize no, there's not a single culture out here that wants you above them. Just like I think I asked in the last um, segment that I did, if there was a whole civil war fought to keep you where you were, do you think if that civil war would not have been fought, that any of this would ever change? That they would have ever changed one bit? So while you are sitting up here and we're walking up and down the aisle in the store, I just had an issue the other day in the Winn Dixie. Walking down the aisle in the store where the lady act like, how dare I walk past her? I was supposed to stand and wait until she went by and did what she needed to do in the aisle of the grocery store before I did. And I was like, look, this ain't that. This ain't that. I'm going by my business. But we're getting back to a point where you're starting to have to watch yourself. You're starting to have to watch yourself out here with them. It's going back to that. I mean, it's not as many killings as it was, but just like when he first got in office last time, Man, there was black people dying every single day at the hands of the police. I just sat here and watched these ICE people pull a woman off of a tree. Like she was hugging a tree. And they said they were going after the worst of the worst. I mean, listen, I don't know nothing about all of this stuff that's going on. I'm going with my creator. That's how I'm looking at it. And I suggest everybody else do the same thing. But because none of it would be happening, whoever's there is because he let them be there. So there you go. So and that's how I look at it. But this you got to wake up, people. You got to wake up, and the main thing is we got to find each other in the darkness so we can stand together. We got to and somebody can help lead us out of this black hole. And we got to hold these celebrities in our culture. We got to hold their feet to the fire because they're the ones that can help us get up out of here. You sitting up here with $500 million, man. Keep $450 million and put 50 million into your people. They sitting here bragging to you about it every day. They rapping about it. They got their stuff on they. If your diamonds is shining, throw your wrist up. I mean, they doing this all the time. So I'm just saying, like, don't sit here and keep teasing the other people up under you. That's enough. I I started feeling some kind of way, when I was, some of the videos I used to make. That's why I don't do it as much anymore. But I want to help. So that's what I set out to do. That's the reason for this podcast, to help you and help you wake up. So people spread the news, man. Listen, I'm not gonna hold y'all up. I'm gonna get on out of here. But thank you for tuning in once again. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm your host, Tad Al, and we are out of here.